A homeless Navy SEAL bought a sealed farm for $4. Then his dog uncovered a bunker powerful men would kill for. The night Travis Mercer inherited a forgotten Montana farm for $4, he thought he'd finally found a place to disappear. But beneath the snow-covered barn, his retired military dog, Ghost, uncovered a hidden bunker tied to missing soldiers, secret war crimes, and a conspiracy buried for decades. By sunrise, armed men were already hunting them through the mountains. Comment 1 if you'd fight to protect the truth, or 0 if you'd walk away, and tell us where you're watching from. The wind outside sounded like something alive. It scraped against the metal siding of the veterans' shelter in long, mournful waves, rattling loose gutters and pushing icy dust across the parking lot under the pale Colorado moon. Snow had started falling again just after midnight, soft at first, then heavier, swallowing the world beyond the chain-link fence in white silence. Inside the shelter, the air smelled of bleach, damp clothes, burnt coffee, and exhaustion. Rows of narrow military cots filled the converted gymnasium from wall to wall. Some men snored softly beneath donated blankets. Others stared silently into darkness with hollow eyes that never fully closed anymore. A television mounted near the ceiling flickered muted late-night commercials over a room full of forgotten soldiers. At the far end of the shelter, nearest the emergency exit doors, Travis Mercer lay awake on his cot staring at the rusted ceiling beams overhead. He always chose the cot closest to the exit. Old habits. Closest route out. Closest cover. Closest chance to survive if things went bad. Even now, 3 years after leaving the Navy, his brain still mapped every room like a battlefield. Beside the cot, curled tightly against the thin mattress, slept Ghost. The retired German shepherd's black and tan coat was streaked with gray now, a long scar cut through the fur above his shoulder from shrapnel in Syria. One ear stood upright, while the other bent permanently near the tip from an old knife wound Travis never talked about. The dog slept lightly, always lightly. One twitch, one sound, one shift in Travis's breathing, and Ghost would wake instantly. Travis rubbed both hands across his face and checked the digital clock mounted above the basketball hoop. 2:17 a.m. Again. He had not slept more than 2 consecutive hours in almost 4 years. Not since Kandahar. Not since the mission that officially never happened. The room suddenly felt too warm, too tight, too loud. A man coughed 3 cots away. Another muttered something in his sleep. Somewhere near the bathrooms, pipes groaned inside the walls. Travis closed his eyes. Big mistake. The dream came immediately. Gunfire cracking through narrow stone alleys, dust choking the air, blood spreading across concrete. Sergeant Miller screaming for help through the radio. Then silence. Then the explosion. Travis jerked violently upright with a gasp. His chest heaved. Cold sweat drenched the back of his shirt. For half a second, he wasn't in Colorado anymore. He was back there. Back in smoke and fire. Back hearing men die. Ghost lifted his head immediately. The shepherd pressed against Travis's leg before the panic could fully take hold. A low, reassuring whine rumbled in the dog's throat. Travis's shaking hand found the thick fur around Ghost's neck. "It's okay," he whispered hoarsely, but his voice sounded unconvinced. Ghost rested his head across Travis's knee without looking away from him, grounding him, anchoring him. The dog had learned the signs years ago overseas, the breathing changes, the sudden jerks awake, the smell of fear and adrenaline flooding Travis's skin before nightmares exploded into full panic attacks. Ghost always knew first. The dog had saved his life more times than Travis could count. Some in combat, some afterward. Across the shelter, an older veteran named Hank slowly sat up from his cot and squinted through darkness. "You good over there, Mercer?" Travis nodded once. "Yeah," Hank grunted softly. Nobody pushed further in places like this. Every man carried ghosts of his own. That was the unspoken rule. The overhead heater rattled violently, blowing dry air through rusted vents. Outside, snow continued piling against the windows in thick white waves. Travis leaned back against the wall behind his cot. He looked exhausted, even sitting still. 38 years old, but the deep lines around his eyes made him look older. His dark beard had grown uneven over the last few weeks. A faded Marine Corps hoodie hung loose across his lean frame, though he had never been a Marine. People donated clothes here. You wore whatever fit. Near his cot sat everything he owned in the world. One duffel bag, one backpack, one old metal lockbox, and Ghost. That was it. A former Navy SEAL reduced to sleeping in a converted gymnasium beside men fighting the same invisible wars. Outside the shelter doors, snow buried Colorado Springs beneath another brutal January storm. Inside, Travis stared at the floor, while Ghost remained pressed against him. "You know the worst part?" Travis murmured quietly. Ghost's ears twitched. "I can't even remember their voices anymore." The words came out rough, ashamed, as if forgetting the dead was some kind of betrayal. Travis swallowed hard and rubbed both hands over his face again. "I remember the blood. I remember the screams. I remember carrying Miller after the blast." His jaw tightened. "But their voices..." He stared blankly toward the dark windows. "They're fading." Ghost nudged his arm. The shepherd's brown eyes never left him. Steady, loyal, present. The dog didn't care who Travis used to be. Didn't care about medals. Didn't care about failure. Didn't care about nightmares. Ghost only cared that Travis kept breathing. A sudden buzzing sound echoed through the shelter. The side security door unlocked. Several heads lifted. Footsteps crossed the lobby outside. Then the shelter supervisor appeared carrying a clipboard and wearing a heavy winter coat. "Mercer?" Travis looked up slowly. "There's someone here asking for you." His stomach tightened immediately. Nobody ever came looking for him. Nobody even knew where he stayed half the time. The supervisor hesitated before glancing toward Ghost. "Dog can come too." Travis stood carefully. Ghost rose instantly beside him. Together they crossed the dim shelter floor, while dozens of tired veterans silently watched. The lobby felt colder than the gym. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Snow blew against the glass doors outside in swirling white clouds. Near the front desk stood a woman in a dark wool coat holding a leather briefcase tightly against her side. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, exhausted expression. Professional, but nervous. When she saw Ghost emerge beside Travis, she stiffened slightly. The shepherd immediately positioned himself between her and Travis. Protective. Always. The woman cleared her throat. "Mr. Mercer?" Travis nodded once. "You found him." "I'm Naomi Whitaker." She extended a gloved hand cautiously. "Legal aid attorney." Travis glanced at the hand, but didn't shake it. "What's this about?" Naomi lowered her arm awkwardly. "I apologize for the late hour. I drove through the storm from Denver." She looked around the quiet lobby before lowering her voice. "I needed to find you before someone else did." That got his attention. Travis's posture changed slightly. Ghost noticed too. The dog's ears rose higher. Naomi opened her briefcase carefully and removed a thick, weathered folder secured with a faded red band. Across the front, Mercer estate file. Travis frowned. "I think you've got the wrong guy." "No," Naomi said softly. "I don't." She opened the file. Inside were photographs, maps, official county documents, old handwritten pages. Naomi studied him carefully before continuing. "Did you ever know a man named Caleb Mercer?" Travis stared blankly. "No." "He was your uncle." "I don't have any family." Naomi hesitated. "You did." The lobby grew very quiet. Wind rattled the shelter windows hard enough to shake the glass. Ghost remained motionless beside Travis, eyes fixed on Naomi's hands. "Caleb Mercer passed away 6 weeks ago in Montana," she said carefully. "According to county records, you are his closest living relative." Travis folded his arms slowly. "And?" Naomi slid a single paper from the folder. A deed. Old. Yellowed with age. "He left you his property." Travis almost laughed. "What property?" "A farm." Silence. Snow hissed across the parking lot outside. Naomi continued quietly. "Approximately 70 acres outside a town called Black Hollow Ridge." Travis stared at her for several seconds. Then finally, "What's the catch?" Naomi exhaled softly. "There's always a catch." She removed another document. "The property has been sealed for over 30 years due to unpaid taxes and legal disputes involving a private energy corporation." She paused carefully. "But your uncle created an unusual inheritance clause through a state trust loophole." Travis frowned. "What kind of loophole?" Naomi met his eyes directly. "The farm can legally be claimed by the surviving heir for $4. For the first time in weeks, something flickered across Travis Mercer's face besides exhaustion. Confusion. Real confusion. $4? Naomi nodded. "But once you claim it, you inherit everything attached to it. Taxes, liens, legal pressure." She hesitated. "And attention." Travis looked toward the snow-covered parking lot beyond the glass doors. The storm outside had nearly erased the road completely. "Why me?" "We don't know. Why would some uncle I never met leave me land?" "That," Naomi said quietly, "is exactly why I drove through a blizzard to find you before anyone else could." Ghost suddenly growled, low, deep. Every muscle in the shepherd's body tightened. Travis turned immediately. Outside the shelter parking lot, barely visible through blowing snow, sat a black SUV across the street. Engine running, headlights off, watching the building. Naomi noticed it too, and for the first time since arriving, she looked genuinely afraid. The black SUV sat motionless beyond the shelter fence while snow drifted across its hood in pale silver waves. No headlights, no movement, just waiting. Ghost's growl deepened. Every hair along the shepherd's back stood upright as he fixed his eyes on the vehicle through the glass doors. Travis felt the old instinct return instantly. Threat assessment, distance, angles, exits. The muscles in his shoulders tightened automatically. Naomi Whitaker slowly closed the estate file. "I was hoping they hadn't found you yet." Travis kept staring at the SUV. "Who are they?" Naomi hesitated too long. That answer alone told him enough. Outside, the storm thickened. Wind curled snow across the empty street, partially swallowing the dark vehicle until it looked like a shadow trying to disappear into the night. Black Hollow Energy, Naomi finally said quietly. The company that's been trying to acquire your uncle's property. Energy company? That's what they call themselves now. Ghost suddenly barked once, sharp, violent. The SUV's engine turned over immediately. Then the vehicle pulled away into the storm, without its headlights ever turning on. Travis watched until it vanished completely. They know where I sleep now, he said flatly. Naomi looked ashamed. I didn't tell them. But somebody did. She didn't answer. That silence carried its own weight. The shelter supervisor awkwardly cleared his throat behind the front desk. Everything okay here? Travis nodded without looking at him. Yeah. But nothing about this felt okay anymore. Naomi carefully slid the deed papers back into the folder. You can still walk away from this, she said softly. You don't have to go to Montana. Travis looked down at the weathered documents. A farm. 70 acres. $4. The whole thing sounded insane. For years, his world had shrunk smaller and smaller until it became one cot near an emergency exit and a dog sleeping beside him in the dark. Now suddenly, there was land, a family name, questions, and someone wealthy enough to send people through a blizzard to watch a homeless veteran shelter. Why are they so interested in this farm? Travis asked. Naomi rubbed tired eyes before answering. The official explanation is natural gas rights under the property. She paused. But I don't believe that's the whole story. Ghost remained locked toward the windows, still alert, still listening. Travis trusted the dog more than he trusted most people. Have you been there? He asked. To the farm? Naomi shook her head. No. Nobody has lived there openly in decades. What happened to my uncle? We don't know exactly. She lowered her voice further. County records say Caleb Mercer died of heart failure 3 months ago, but the sheriff's office never released photos, and the body was cremated almost immediately. Travis frowned. That sounds convenient. Yes. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere deeper in the shelter, a veteran began coughing violently. Ghost finally relaxed slightly when the SUV failed to return. Naomi checked her watch. You should leave before daylight. Travis blinked. Leave? If Black Hollow is monitoring the shelter, they'll expect you to ignore this inheritance or sell immediately. She hesitated. But if you're going to see the property yourself, you need to move before they tighten control around it. Travis almost laughed. You're talking like this is some classified operation. Naomi met his eyes directly. Your uncle was former Navy SEAL, Travis. Silence. The words landed harder than expected. What? She opened the folder again and slid out an old photograph. 3 men in desert camouflage stood beside a military truck somewhere overseas decades earlier. One of them looked disturbingly familiar. Older, sterner, gray around the temples, but unmistakably a Mercer. Caleb. Travis stared silently. He served during the late 80s and early 90s, Naomi said. After discharge, he vanished almost completely from public life. Ghost nudged Travis's hand gently, grounding him again. Travis swallowed hard. My father never mentioned him. According to records, the family fractured years ago. Naomi paused. Most likely because of whatever happened on that farm. Outside, snow hammered against the windows harder now. The storm was worsening fast. Naomi removed a folded bus ticket from her coat pocket. "Colorado Springs to Bozeman," she said. "Leaves at 6:30 this morning." Travis stared at it. "You already bought the ticket?" "I had a feeling you'd go." He should have refused. Should have walked back to his cot and buried himself under blankets until this entire strange situation disappeared. That would have been the smart thing. Safer. Simpler. But something inside him had already shifted. A tiny fracture in the numb routine that had defined his life since the military spit him out. A farm sealed for decades. An uncle nobody talked about. A company watching homeless shelters in the middle of snowstorms. Questions had always been dangerous in Travis Mercer's life, but silence had nearly killed him. "When do we arrive?" he asked quietly. Naomi exhaled slowly, almost relieved. "Tomorrow afternoon, if the roads stay open." The shelter supervisor muttered something about coffee and disappeared into the back office. Ghost finally sat beside Travis again, though the dog remained tense. Naomi handed him the estate folder. "The property deed is inside. So are county maps and access documents." Travis took the file carefully. It felt heavier than paper should. "There's something else, Naomi added. From inside the folder, she removed a smaller yellowed envelope. His name was written across the front in faded black ink. Travis Mercer. The handwriting looked old, uneven, deliberate. "He left that specifically for you," Naomi said. "It was sealed inside the trust." Travis stared at the envelope for several seconds before opening it carefully. Inside was a single handwritten sentence. "When the dog starts barking at the mountain, listen to him." No signature, no explanation. Just those words. Ghost tilted his head slightly, as if sensing his own name hidden somewhere inside the message. A chill crawled slowly up Travis's spine. How did he know about Ghost? Naomi looked unsettled herself. "I don't know." The heater suddenly clicked off. The lobby fell strangely quiet without its constant rattling hum. Outside, snow buried the world deeper in white darkness. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Travis folded the letter carefully and slid it into his jacket pocket. "When do we leave?" Naomi looked toward the storm. Now would be best. By 4:30 in the morning, the snow had buried most of the parking lot, beneath nearly 8 inches of ice and powder. Travis packed everything he owned into his old military duffel, while the shelter remained mostly asleep around him. Nobody asked questions. A few men nodded quietly as he passed between the cots. Veterans recognized departure faces. Some men left shelters chasing jobs, some chasing family, some chasing ghosts. Travis wasn't entirely sure which one he was chasing yet. Ghost walked tightly beside him through the dim gymnasium. Near the exit, old Hank sat awake drinking burnt coffee from a paper cup. "You heading somewhere?" the older veteran asked. "Montana." Hank raised an eyebrow. "That so?" "Apparently inherited a farm." The old man snorted softly. "Hell of a sentence." Travis almost smiled. Almost. Hank looked down at Ghost. "That dog kept you alive." "He still does." The old veteran nodded once like he understood something deeper than words. "Then wherever you're going." Hank glanced toward the storm outside. "Take him seriously." Ghost stared calmly at the old man, as if acknowledging the advice personally. Minutes later, Travis stepped outside into the freezing pre-dawn darkness. The cold hit immediately, sharp enough to burn his lungs. Naomi's aging Subaru waited near the curb, buried beneath snow. The engine coughed heavily when she turned the key. Ghost jumped into the back seat first, always checking spaces before Travis entered them. Another habit from war. As the shelter disappeared behind them through blowing snow, Travis stared silently through the frosted passenger window. Colorado Springs slowly faded into darkness behind the storm. Strip malls, gas stations, streetlights, then mountains, huge black shapes rising against the pale horizon. Naomi kept both hands tight on the steering wheel. "You can still change your mind." Travis watched the road ahead. "Do you know what the worst part of homelessness is?" Naomi glanced at him briefly. "What?" "Nobody expects you to have a future anymore." His voice stayed calm. "Empty. After a while, you stop expecting one too." The windshield wipers groaned against thick ice. Ghost rested his head between the front seats, watching the road. For the first time in years, Travis Mercer felt something dangerous beginning to return. Curiosity. And somewhere far ahead beyond the frozen highways and mountain passes, a sealed farm waited beneath the snow. Morning came slowly across the Rockies. Gray light spilled over endless mountain ridges, while Naomi's Subaru crawled north through sheets of blowing snow. Pine forests rolled past like dark oceans beneath the winter sky, broken only by frozen rivers and abandoned gas stations standing silent beside the highway. Ghost had not slept once. The German Shepherd remained upright in the back seat the entire drive, ears twitching constantly, eyes fixed beyond the windows as though listening to something far away. By noon, Colorado was gone behind them. Montana rose ahead like another world. The mountains here felt older, wilder. Small towns appeared only occasionally along the highway, clusters of weathered buildings tucked against cliffs and forests where smoke drifted from chimneys into pale skies. Rusted trucks sat frozen outside diners. American flags snapped violently in the wind above gas stations and feed stores. Civilization felt thin out here. Temporary. Naomi finally broke the silence as they crossed a narrow bridge over an icy river. "You should know something before we reach Black Hollow Ridge." Travis looked away from the window. "That sounds promising." She ignored the sarcasm. "Your uncle didn't just isolate himself." Her hands tightened slightly on the wheel. "People in that town genuinely feared him." "Why?" "We don't know exactly. Rumors, mostly." She glanced toward the estate folder resting on the dashboard. Some people claimed he fired warning shots at trespassers. Others said military vehicles used to visit the property late at night years ago. Ghost suddenly stood in the back seat, alert. A low growl rolled from deep inside his chest. Travis immediately turned forward. "What is it?" The dog stared toward the tree line beside the highway. Then Travis saw it too. A black SUV moving through traffic several hundred yards behind them. The same model from outside the shelter. Snow sprayed beneath its tires as it maintained perfect distance. Naomi cursed quietly. "They found us again." Travis watched the vehicle carefully. No front plate. Dark tinted windows. Steady. Professional. Ghost's growl deepened. Travis slowly reached back and rested a hand against the dog's neck. "Easy." The SUV remained behind them for nearly 20 miles, then suddenly disappeared down another road without attempting to pass. But the message had already been delivered. You are being watched. By late afternoon, they reached Black Hollow Ridge. The town sat hidden between mountains beneath heavy clouds, small and weather-beaten beside a frozen lake. A faded wooden sign welcomed visitors into town, though most of the paint had peeled away years ago. Population 814. The main street looked half asleep beneath the snow. An old hardware store, a church, a post office, a diner glowing warmly against the storm. Travis noticed people staring as Naomi's Subaru rolled past. Not curious stares, careful ones, like the town had learned long ago not to ask too many questions. Naomi parked beside the diner. "You should eat before we head to the property," she said. Ghost jumped out first into knee-deep snow. The cold air hit Travis hard the second he stepped outside, sharp enough to sting his teeth. Mountains towered around the valley in every direction, dark against the fading sky. Beautiful, and isolated enough for secrets to disappear forever. Inside the diner, warmth and the smell of frying bacon wrapped around them immediately. Country music played softly through old speakers overhead. A few ranchers sat along the counter nursing coffee while snow crusted their boots near the door. Conversations stopped when Travis entered with Ghost. The shepherd moved silently beside him, calm but alert. Near the back corner booth sat an old man wearing a brown ranch coat and a faded Vietnam veteran cap. The second his eyes landed on Travis, something changed in his expression. Recognition. Not of Travis, of the name he carried. Naomi leaned closer. "That's Earl Donnelly. Friend of my uncle?" "Maybe." They ordered coffee and sat 2 booths away. Ghost lay beneath the table but refused to fully relax. The old rancher kept glancing toward them over his mug. Finally, after several minutes, Earl slowly stood and walked across the diner. His boots creaked against the wooden floor. "You Caleb Mercer's boy?" Travis looked up. "Nephew." Earl studied him carefully beneath bushy gray eyebrows. "You got his eyes?" Travis wasn't sure how to answer that. Earl glanced toward Ghost. "Dog's military." "Yes, can tell." The old man slid into the booth across from them without asking permission. Outside, snow continued falling harder against the windows. "You heading up to the Mercer place?" Earl asked quietly. Travis nodded once. The old rancher sighed deeply. "Lord help you then." Naomi folded her arms. "You knew Caleb?" "Knew of him." Earl rubbed rough hands together slowly. "Town used to see him sometimes years back. Came down for supplies once every few months. Never stayed long." "What happened out there?" Travis asked. Earl looked toward the storm outside before answering. "That land's been watched a long time." The exact words from the outline. "Need continue naturally." Watched by who? Men with money. Men who don't belong in places like this. Earl lowered his voice. Black SUVs before black SUVs were common. Private security boys, federal-looking types, folks asking questions nobody should ask. Ghost suddenly lifted his head beneath the table. Earl noticed immediately. "He's sensing it too, ain't he?" Travis frowned slightly. "Sensing what?" The old rancher looked directly toward the mountains beyond town. "Something wrong with that land." Silence settled heavily over the booth. Wind rattled the diner windows. Finally, Earl leaned closer. "Your uncle accused powerful people of treason." Naomi stiffened. "You heard that story too?" "Heard plenty." Earl's face darkened. "Caleb used to claim military contractors were smuggling weapons overseas through fake energy operations back in the 90s. He paused. "Said American soldiers died because somebody rich wanted another yacht." Travis felt tension creep slowly into his chest. PTSD had taught him something simple. Sometimes paranoia came from trauma, and sometimes paranoia came from surviving long enough to know the truth. What happened after he accused them? Travis asked quietly. Earl gave a grim smile. He disappeared behind that gate and never trusted another soul again. The diner waitress arrived with coffee refills, interrupting the silence. When she noticed the tension at the table, she quickly retreated without speaking. Ghost remained motionless beneath Travis's chair, listening, watching. The old rancher reached into his coat pocket and removed a folded paper map. He spread it carefully across the table. This road here leads toward the Mercer property. He tapped a narrow line disappearing into forested mountains north of town. Storm's getting ugly, though. You'll want to hurry before dark. Naomi studied the map. There's no official access road? There used to be. Earl snorted softly. Nature took most of it back. Travis stared down at the map. The property sat nearly 15 miles outside town, surrounded by dense national forest. Completely isolated. Perfect place to hide. Perfect place to bury things. Earl folded the map again before handing it to Travis. Then his weathered face turned serious. When you get there, he hesitated. Don't use the main gate. Travis and Naomi exchanged a glance. You know about that? Naomi asked carefully. The old rancher nodded. Caleb always said anybody using the front entrance didn't belong there. A cold feeling crept quietly through Travis's stomach. Too many people knew strange details about this property. Too many warnings. Too many half-finished stories. Ghost suddenly stood. The shepherd stared toward the diner windows again. Outside, across the street, a black SUV had parked beside the gas station, engine idling, watching. Earl followed Travis's gaze. His jaw tightened immediately. Told you, he muttered quietly. That land's still being watched. Nobody moved for several seconds. Then Earl slowly stood from the booth. If I were you, he pulled his ranch coat tighter. I'd get to that farm before they do. The old man turned toward the door. But before leaving, he looked back at Travis one final time. There's one more thing Caleb used to say. Travis waited. Earl glanced toward Ghost. He said the dog would know before the man ever did. Then the old rancher disappeared into the storm. Outside, darkness was already swallowing the valley, and somewhere beyond the forests and mountains ahead, a rusted gate waited beneath decades of snow. Darkness settled fully over Black Hollow Ridge by the time Travis and Naomi left the diner. Snow swirled through the town in thick white sheets beneath flickering streetlights. Most businesses had already gone dark for the night, their windows glowing faintly beneath layers of frost. Only the black SUV remained visible, still parked across from the gas station, still watching. Naomi gripped the steering wheel tightly as they pulled back onto the road leading north out of town. They're not even hiding it anymore, she muttered. Travis stared through the passenger window toward the mountains ahead. They want us nervous. Ghost stood in the back seat again, alert, restless. The deeper they drove into the wilderness, the more agitated the shepherd became. His ears twitched constantly toward the forests beyond the road. Twice he let out low, warning growls at stretches of empty darkness where Travis saw absolutely nothing. The paved road gradually narrowed into cracked asphalt, then gravel, then little more than frozen dirt winding through towering pine trees. Snow covered nearly everything now. The world had become black forest and white silence, No houses, no power lines, no signs of civilization, only mountains. The Subaru's headlights cut through blowing snow as the vehicle crawled deeper into the wilderness. Finally, Naomi slowed near a barely visible fork in the road. "This is it," she whispered. Ahead, hidden between walls of pine trees, stood a massive iron gate. Even buried beneath snow and rust, the thing looked imposing. Old, heavy, wrong somehow. Chains wrapped tightly around the bars from top to bottom, thick with ice and corrosion. A weathered sign barely remained attached to one side. "Private property, no trespassing." The wind moaned through the trees around it. Beyond the gate, Travis could barely make out the shape of a long, overgrown driveway disappearing into darkness. Ghost began growling immediately. Not aggressively. Warningly. The dog's eyes locked toward the woods east of the property. Travis stepped from the car slowly, boots crunching into deep snow. The cold hit harder out here than in town. Wild cold. Untouched cold. Naomi handed him the estate folder beneath the swirling snowfall. There should be access instructions inside. Travis flipped through the papers with numb fingers until he found another handwritten note folded between county documents. Same faded handwriting as before. Never open the main gate. Use the hunter's trail. Travis stared toward the chained entrance again. Your uncle really liked riddles. Naomi glanced nervously toward the forest. Maybe he had reasons. Ghost suddenly pulled hard toward the tree line beside the road. The shepherd sniffed aggressively beneath heavy snowdrifts before stopping near a narrow break between the pines. Travis moved closer with a flashlight. There, almost invisible beneath fresh snowfall. Footprints. Recent ones. His heartbeat slowed automatically into combat rhythm. Not panic. Focus. Somebody had walked this trail recently. Ghost followed the tracks several feet farther before turning back toward Travis. Waiting, as if asking permission. Naomi saw the prints too. "Oh God." Travis crouched beside them. Large boots, deep tread, probably male, less than a day old despite the storm. "We're not alone out here," he said quietly. The wind moved heavily through the trees overhead. Ghost stared deeper into the darkness beyond the trail, every muscle tight beneath his fur. Travis looked back toward the road. The black SUV was nowhere visible now, but somehow that felt worse. "Stay close," he told Naomi. The hunter's trail twisted through dense forest beside the outer fence line. Snow-covered branches clawed at their coats as they pushed deeper between the trees. The woods felt unnaturally quiet. No birds, no distant traffic. Nothing except wind and the sound of boots crushing snow. Ghost led the way, always stopping occasionally to sniff the air before moving forward again. Travis noticed the dog repeatedly glance toward the mountains towering above them through gaps in the trees. The same mountains from the letter. When the dog starts barking at the mountain, listen to him. He still had no idea what that meant. After nearly 20 minutes of climbing through snow and darkness, the forest finally opened. Naomi stopped cold beside him. "Oh my God." The Mercer farm spread across the valley below them. Even abandoned beneath winter snow, the property looked enormous. A 2-story farmhouse stood near the center of the valley, surrounded by collapsing fences and frozen fields. Behind it towered an immense red barn, weathered dark by decades of storms. Mountains rose on every side like silent stone walls. The place didn't feel abandoned. It felt hidden. Ghost slowly stepped forward first, The shepherd's breath drifted through cold air, while his eyes scanned the property carefully. Then Travis saw it. A faint light. Upstairs in the farmhouse. Gone almost instantly. Naomi saw it too. "Did you?" "Yeah." Silence returned immediately afterward. The farmhouse windows remained dark. Maybe reflection. Maybe imagination. Or maybe somebody inside had just realized they arrived. Travis's military instincts screamed at him to leave. Too exposed. Too isolated. Too many unknowns. But something stronger pulled him forward. The farmhouse porch groaned beneath their boots as they approached. Snow piled heavily against the walls and broken railings. One upstairs shutter banged slowly in the wind. Ghost sniffed beneath the front door before stepping aside. No barking. No aggression. Just tension. Travis found an old brass key taped beneath the porch railing, exactly where another note inside the folder said it would be. His uncle had expected him. That realization unsettled him more than anything else so far. The lock resisted at first, then slowly turned. The front door creaked open into darkness. Cold, stale air rolled outward, carrying the scent of dust, old wood, and something faintly metallic underneath it all. Ghost entered first, always first. The flashlight beam swept slowly across the interior, and Travis stopped breathing for a moment. The house looked frozen in time. Furniture remained perfectly arranged beneath layers of dust. A coffee mug still sat beside an old recliner near the fireplace. Bookshelves lined the walls beside military photographs and faded maps pinned carefully beneath glass frames. Everything looked untouched, as if Caleb Mercer had simply walked outside one day and never returned. Naomi whispered softly behind him, "It's like a museum." No, not a museum. A command post. Travis recognized the feeling immediately. Everything inside the house had military precision. Ordered. Intentional. Controlled. Ghost moved room to room silently, while Travis explored with the flashlight. Near the fireplace hung several framed military medals, Navy commendations, service ribbons, and beneath them, a black and white photograph. 5 SEALs standing beside a helicopter somewhere overseas decades earlier. One of them was Caleb, younger, hard-eyed, armed. Travis stared at the photo for a long moment. Same jawline, same eyes. Blood recognized blood even after death. Naomi quietly examined a bookshelf nearby. "Travis." He turned. She held up another framed document. "Honorable discharge, Caleb Mercer Unit, classified former Navy SEAL. Just like him." A strange heaviness settled into Travis's chest. His father had never once mentioned Caleb existed. Not once. Ghost suddenly growled sharply from down the hallway. Travis moved immediately. The dog stood rigid outside a narrow closet door near the back bedrooms. Every hair along Ghost's spine stood upright now. The shepherd barked once, violent, warning. Travis slowly opened the closet. Inside sat stacks of dusty VHS tapes labeled carefully by year, and one tape marked with a location that made Travis freeze instantly. Kandahar, the same region where his own classified mission had gone catastrophically wrong years later. A cold feeling crawled beneath his skin. "How could he know about that place?" Naomi whispered. Travis didn't answer. Because suddenly another possibility had entered his mind. Maybe this inheritance wasn't random at all. Ghost turned away from the closet and looked toward the barn, visible through the kitchen window. Then he barked again. Lower this time. Intentional. Travis followed the dog into the kitchen. Moonlight filtered weakly through frosted windows across dusty countertops and old cabinets. There, resting alone at the center of the table, sat a folded note. Fresh. No dust on it. Travis picked it up slowly. If Ghost trusts the barn, trust what he finds. No signature. But he already knew who wrote it. Outside, beyond the frozen windows, the massive red barn stood silently beneath falling snow, waiting. The wind had calmed slightly outside, but the silence felt worse now. Heavier. The kind of silence that made every creak inside the farmhouse sound deliberate. Naomi stood frozen beside the kitchen table while Travis reread the note in his hand. If Ghost trusts the barn, trust what he finds. Ghost was already staring toward the back door, focused, intent. The shepherd's ears remained raised toward the dark shape of the barn visible through blowing snow beyond the kitchen windows. Travis folded the note slowly and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "We should wait until morning," Naomi said quietly. But even as she spoke, her voice lacked conviction. Ghost barked once, sharp, then moved toward the door. Travis watched the dog carefully. In combat, Ghost had detected hidden explosives before trained equipment did. Ambushes before human eyes noticed movement. Fear before men admitted they felt it. You learned to trust instincts like that, or you died. The former SEAL grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen counter. "We're already here." Naomi stared at him. "In the middle of the night?" "Whoever left those footprints knows we arrived." Travis checked the beam on the flashlight. "If there's something hidden in that barn, I'd rather find it before they do." Outside, snow crunched beneath their boots as they crossed the open yard. The barn loomed larger with every step. Ancient, massive. Its weathered red paint had darkened almost black in places, beneath decades of storms. Heavy chains wrapped loosely around one half-open sliding door that groaned softly whenever the wind pushed against it. Ghost reached the entrance first, then stopped, completely still. Travis moved beside him slowly. The dog's breathing changed, low, controlled, focused, like he'd entered operational mode. "What is it?" Travis whispered. Ghost stared into the darkness inside the barn, then stepped forward. The flashlight beam swept across towering wooden rafters, disappearing high overhead into shadows. Dust floated through cold air or thick with the smell of hay, oil, rust, and old pine. Rows of ancient farming equipment stood abandoned beneath tarps. A tractor, fuel drums, broken tools. But something about the barn felt wrong immediately. Too clean. Not physically clean. Organized. Intentional. Like somebody had preserved this place carefully. Ghost moved deeper between old equipment and stacks of crates. His claws clicked sharply against wooden flooring. Naomi followed nervously behind Travis, her flashlight trembling slightly in her hands. The storm outside moaned through cracks in the walls. Then Ghost stopped suddenly near the center of the barn. The shepherd lowered his head, sniffed once, twice, then began scratching violently at the floorboards. Travis froze. The dog barked sharply now, digging harder against the wood. "Ghost!" But the shepherd ignored him completely. Wood splintered beneath powerful paws. Ghost growled deeply while clawing at one specific section of the floor. Travis moved closer. The boards sounded different there. Hollow. His pulse quickened instantly. Naomi saw it too. Oh my God. Travis scanned the barn carefully. No tools nearby except an old crowbar hanging beside a workbench. He grabbed it quickly. Ghost backed away just enough for Travis to wedge the metal bar between the floorboards. The wood resisted at first, then cracked sharply upward. Dust exploded into the flashlight beams. Beneath the boards sat steel, a hatch, heavy, industrial, military. Naomi covered her mouth. That's not a storm shelter. No, it wasn't. Travis recognized reinforced steel immediately. Government-grade construction. Ghost stood rigid beside the opening now, growling softly toward the darkness below. The hatch had a recessed handle and mechanical wheel lock similar to submarine compartments. Military. Definitely military. Travis brushed decades of dust from the metal surface, stamped faintly into one corner. Property of U.S. Defense Logistics. The former SEAL felt something cold move through his stomach. What the hell was your uncle hiding? He turned the wheel slowly. Metal groaned beneath pressure. Then, clank. The lock released. A rush of stale underground air rolled upward, carrying the scent of concrete, machine oil, and old paper. Ghost immediately stepped between Travis and the opening. Protective. Naomi pointed her flashlight downward. Steel stairs disappeared into darkness beneath the barn. Travis looked toward her. You can stay up here. Naomi laughed nervously. Absolutely not. Ghost descended first, always first. The flashlight beams followed him into the underground chamber below, and suddenly the story changed. The bunker stretched far beneath the barn, like something built for war. Concrete walls, metal shelving, generator systems, storage crates stacked floor to ceiling. Not survivalist junk, professional infrastructure. Rows of filing cabinets lined one wall beside military radios and old computer equipment covered in dust sheets. Maps hung beneath plastic wraps, showing regions Travis instantly recognized from overseas deployments. Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. Ghost slowly moved through the bunker, sniffing methodically. His growling had stopped now, but his tension remained. Near the center of the room stood a large steel desk covered with papers and photographs frozen beneath years of dust. Travis stepped closer. Satellite images. Military convoy routes. Shipping manifests. And photographs. Dozens of them. Men unloading crates from cargo planes at desert airstrips. Private security contractors beside American military vehicles. Armed groups Travis recognized instantly from classified intelligence briefings years earlier. His heartbeat slowed dangerously. Combat calm. The kind that came before violence. Naomi picked up a document carefully. What is Black Hollow Energy? Travis turned toward her. What? She handed him a faded corporate folder. Black Hollow Energy Solutions. The same company from the SUV. The same company trying to buy the farm. Inside the folder sat financial records connecting energy shipments with overseas military supply contracts dating back decades. Ghost suddenly barked near the back wall. Travis moved quickly toward him. The shepherd stood beside several stacked hard cases. Military grade. Locked. One had broken partially open. Bundles of cash sat inside. Stacks and stacks. Hundreds of thousands at least. Naomi stared in disbelief. Oh my God! But Travis barely noticed the money. Something else had caught his attention. A photograph pinned to the wall nearby. A younger Caleb Mercer standing beside 4 SEAL operators. One face among them made Travis freeze completely. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz. Dead. At least according to official reports. Ruiz had supposedly died in an ambush outside Kandahar 11 years earlier. Travis himself attended the memorial service. But here he stood in the photograph beside Caleb Mercer, dated 3 years after his recorded death. Travis felt the room tilt slightly. That's impossible. Naomi stepped closer. You know him? Travis couldn't answer immediately, because suddenly memories came flooding back. Ruiz laughing during deployment. Ruiz smoking cigarettes outside barracks. Ruiz warning Travis never to trust contractors embedded with military logistics. Then Ruiz disappeared during a classified convoy operation, officially killed in action. Except maybe he wasn't. Ghost nudged Travis's hand sharply. The shepherd stared toward an old television monitor connected to shelves filled with VHS tapes, each tape labeled carefully in Caleb's handwriting. Operation Scorpion, Convoy Redline, Kandahar transfers. Evidence. Years of evidence. Naomi slowly turned in place, taking in the bunker around them. This isn't just hidden money. Her voice trembled now. This is documentation. Travis opened another file folder. Inside were handwritten journal pages from Caleb Mercer. The first sentence stopped him cold. If you are reading this, they finally found me. The wind outside hammered violently against the barn overhead. Ghost suddenly growled again. Different this time. Alert. Danger. Travis's head snapped upward instantly. Then he heard it too. Footsteps. Above them. Inside the barn. The footsteps moved slowly across the wooden floor overhead. Creak. Pause. Creak. Ghost's growl deepened instantly. Every muscle in the German shepherd's body tightened as he stared toward the bunker stairs. Travis killed his flashlight immediately. Darkness swallowed the underground room. Only the faint emergency glow from old backup power panels remained, casting dim red light across shelves of military files and dust-covered equipment. Naomi's breathing became shallow beside him. Oh God. Travis raised one finger. Quiet. Years of combat returned to him like muscle memory. Control breathing. Reduce movement. Listen first. The footsteps above stopped completely. Snow hissed against the barn roof outside. Then came another sound. Metal shifting. Somebody moving chains near the entrance doors. Ghost moved silently closer to Travis's leg. Ready. Protective. Travis slowly reached toward one of the shelves beside him and froze when his hand brushed cold steel. A pistol. Military issue. He checked the chamber automatically. Loaded. Naomi stared at him in disbelief. Your uncle kept weapons down here? Travis answered without looking away from the stairs. My uncle expected war. The footsteps above resumed briefly, then faded toward the far end of the barn. A vehicle engine rumbled faintly outside. Another one answered it moments later. More than one truck. Travis's jaw tightened. They're searching the property. Ghost let out a low warning rumble deep in his throat. The former SEAL slowly crouched beside the shelves of tapes and documents again. We need to know what Caleb found. Naomi looked stunned. Now? If they came all the way out here during a blizzard, then whatever's inside these files matters more than this farm. He grabbed several VHS tapes from the shelf. Kandahar transfer, Redline logistics, Black Hollow operations. Nearby sat an old television and tape deck connected to backup battery systems still somehow functioning, after decades underground. Caleb had maintained this bunker carefully, methodically, like he knew someone would eventually come. Travis inserted the first tape. Static crackled across the dusty television screen. Then grainy footage appeared. Night vision, desert terrain. A timestamp from nearly 20 years earlier. The camera shook as armed men unloaded military crates from cargo trucks beneath floodlights somewhere overseas. Travis recognized the location immediately. Afghanistan. The voice behind the camera whispered quietly, "These shipments are bypassing official military inventory." Another voice answered, "They're moving weapons off book." The footage zoomed toward several men wearing contractor uniforms with black hollow insignia. Then Travis froze. One of the soldiers helping unload crates wore U.S. military camouflage. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz. Alive. Not dead. Very much alive. Naomi looked between the screen and Travis. "That's him?" Travis nodded slowly. His throat felt tight now. Ruiz looked thinner in the footage. Older. Terrified. The tape continued. The cameraman whispered again. "Convoys marked as fuel transport are carrying military-grade weapons to unauthorized buyers. We have visual confirmation." Another voice cut in sharply. "They know we're here." The footage jerked violently. Shouting erupted. Then gunfire. The tape distorted briefly before stabilizing again. And what Travis saw next made his stomach turn cold. Men in contractor gear executing captured American soldiers. Quick, professional, silent. One body hit the ground near the camera. Ruiz. The footage cut abruptly to static. Naomi covered her mouth. "Oh my God!" Ghost pressed closer against Travis's side. The former SEAL stared silently at the flickering screen. Ruiz had not died in combat. He had been murdered. Executed after discovering something he wasn't supposed to see. Travis suddenly remembered the official story from years ago. Ambush. Missing bodies. Incomplete remains. No witnesses. A clean explanation. Too clean. He inserted another tape. This one opened with Caleb Mercer sitting directly before the camera. Older than in the photographs. Bearded. Exhausted. But his eyes remained razor sharp. "If this tape is being watched," Caleb said calmly, "then either I am dead, or they finally decided to stop waiting." Behind him sat the same bunker, the same room, the same shelves surrounding Travis now. Caleb leaned slightly toward the camera. "My name is Caleb Mercer, former Navy SEAL, attached logistics oversight during joint contractor operations in Afghanistan, beginning in 1998. He paused heavily. "Black Hollow Energy is not an energy company." Naomi sat slowly into a nearby chair. Ghost remained standing, always alert. Caleb continued. "They used military transport contracts to move illegal weapons through conflict zones while billing the U.S. government for fuel and infrastructure support." His face darkened. Soldiers who discovered the operation disappeared. Photographs appeared on screen beside him. Dead soldiers. Missing convoy personnel. Contractors. Maps. Caleb pointed toward one image. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz attempted to expose shipment records in 2001. 3 days later, he was reported killed in hostile action. Caleb looked directly into the camera. That was a lie. Travis felt anger rising slowly inside his chest. Not explosive anger. Worse, cold anger. The kind that stayed. The tape continued for over an hour. Evidence. Names. Dates. Transfer routes. Years and years of documentation. Black Hollow had operated like a parasite beside American military operations for decades, selling weapons illegally through shell corporations while soldiers died protecting supply lines they never understood. Then Caleb said something that changed everything. I tried reporting this through official channels. His expression hardened. They were already compromised. Silence filled the bunker. Even the storm outside seemed quieter now. Caleb leaned closer toward the camera. If you are watching this, understand something clearly. The corruption reaches federal agencies, defense contracting, intelligence offices, and elected officials. His voice lowered dangerously. There are no clean hands left at the top. Naomi whispered softly. That's why he disappeared. Yes, Travis muttered, because Caleb Mercer hadn't been hiding from the world. He had been surviving it. Ghost suddenly barked sharply toward the stairs. Travis snapped the television off instantly. Above them, another sound. Doors slamming. Voices outside the barn. Multiple men. The former SEAL moved silently toward the bottom of the staircase and listened. Muffled conversation drifted through the floorboards overhead. Tracks in the snow. They're here. Check the house again. Ghost's growl deepened into something dangerous. Naomi looked pale now. They brought people. Travis glanced around the bunker quickly. Escape routes, weapons, supplies. Caleb had prepared for siege conditions. Military ration crates lined one wall beside medical kits and backup fuel generators. Another shelf contained radios, binoculars, and maps of surrounding forests. This wasn't paranoia. This was contingency planning. Caleb knew eventually someone would come for the evidence. And now they had. Travis picked up another folder from the desk while listening to movement overhead. Inside sat handwritten journal entries, page after page. The first entry read, "The men who uncover corruption do not disappear because they are weak. They disappear because they become dangerous to powerful people." Another page. Ruiz wanted to go public. I told him it would get him killed. He said soldiers deserve the truth. 3 days later, they murdered him beside a convoy route and blamed insurgents. Travis closed the journal slowly. His breathing had changed again. Not fear, resolve. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about inheritance anymore, or land, or even Caleb. Men he served beside had been erased, lied about, buried, and somebody out there still controlled the machine responsible. Ghost pressed against Travis's leg suddenly. The dog sensed it too. Movement. Close now. Very close. Then, thud. Something heavy struck the barn door overhead. A second impact followed immediately after. The men outside weren't searching anymore. They were coming in. Another heavy impact slammed against the barn doors overhead. Dust drifted from the bunker ceiling. Ghost barked furiously now, deep and violent, every instinct inside the shepherd screaming danger. Naomi backed away from the stairs, pale with fear. "What do we do?" Travis's mind had already shifted fully into operational mode. The panic was gone. Combat had burned that part out of him years ago. Now there was only assessment. Distance. Entrances. Numbers. Timing. He grabbed several hard drives and stuffed them into an old military backpack hanging beside the desk. Then he took Caleb's journals, Ruiz's photograph, and 3 VHS tapes before slinging the bag across his shoulder. "What about the rest?" Naomi whispered. "If they came prepared, We don't have time. Above them, wood splintered violently. A voice echoed faintly through the barn. "Spread out!" Ghost snarled toward the staircase. Travis looked around the bunker quickly until he spotted another steel door, partially hidden behind storage shelves. He moved toward it fast, locked. Then he noticed the faded stencil painted above the frame. Emergency exit. Caleb had built escape routes. Of course he had. Travis spun the wheel lock hard. Metal groaned loudly. Outside the main bunker room, footsteps crossed directly above them now. Another voice. "Check the floor." Ghost lunged toward the stairs, barking explosively. Too late. Someone upstairs had heard him. Travis yanked the steel door open. A narrow tunnel stretched into darkness beneath the farm. Concrete walls. Emergency lights dead. Cold air drifting through unseen vents. Naomi stared in disbelief. He built tunnels? He built survival plans. The former SEAL grabbed her arm. "Move." Ghost backed down the staircase reluctantly, refusing to turn his back fully toward the bunker entrance until Travis physically pulled him into the tunnel. Moments later, bang! The hidden bunker hatch above burst open. Voices exploded through the underground chamber behind them. "Down there!" Flashlights swept across concrete walls. Travis killed his own flashlight instantly and pulled Naomi against the tunnel wall while Ghost crouched silently beside them. Light beams danced wildly through the bunker behind them. Men shouting, metal crashing, drawers opening. Then one voice cut sharply through the chaos. "Find the files." Professional, controlled, authority. Travis recognized the tone immediately. Private military. The same kind of men contractors hired because they operated like soldiers without rules. Ghost trembled beside him with restrained aggression. The shepherd wanted to attack, wanted to protect. But years of training held him in place. Barely. The tunnel curved deeper beneath the property, while voices echoed faintly behind them. After nearly 50 yards, Travis finally risked his flashlight again. The narrow passage led upward gradually, through packed earth reinforced by old timber supports. Caleb Mercer had spent years preparing for war under this farm. Naomi struggled to catch her breath beside him. "They're going to destroy everything. Not if they still need something." "What?" Travis adjusted the backpack. "Proof we found it." Ghost suddenly stopped moving. The dog's ears rose sharply. "Someone ahead." Travis killed the flashlight again instantly. Darkness swallowed them. Footsteps approached from farther inside the tunnel. Slow, deliberate. Naomi's breathing quickened. Travis silently raised Caleb's pistol. The approaching figure paused. Then a flashlight beam flickered toward them briefly. A man's voice echoed through darkness. "If you're Caleb's blood, lower the gun." Travis froze. The flashlight lowered slowly, revealing an older man bundled in heavy winter clothing with a gray beard and weathered face. Earl Donnelly, the rancher from the diner. Ghost growled cautiously, but didn't attack. Earl looked exhausted and unsurprised. "Told you that land was being watched." Travis lowered the pistol slightly, but didn't holster it. "How did you find us?" "Been keeping an eye on the property since your uncle died." Earl glanced back toward distant echoes in the tunnel. "And I figured Black Hollow would move fast once you opened that bunker." Naomi stared at him. "You knew about this place?" "Not all of it." Earl nodded toward the backpack. "But Caleb trusted me enough to know trouble was buried under that barn." Another crash echoed faintly behind them. The intruders were tearing through the bunker now. Earl motioned deeper into the tunnel. This exit leads near the river canyon. You stay underground another 10 minutes, and you'll come out beyond the tree line. Why help us? Travis asked. The old rancher looked directly into his eyes. Because your uncle saved my son once overseas. Earl's face hardened. And because too many good men already disappeared over what's in those files. Ghost relaxed slightly, as if deciding Earl belonged here. The old rancher handed Travis a folded paper. A cabin's marked on this map. Old hunting place near the western ridge. He glanced toward Naomi. Lay low there till daylight. Then Earl's expression darkened. And there's something else you need to know. Travis waited. Black Hollow already sent someone important. The old rancher's jaw tightened. Victor Shaw. Naomi inhaled sharply. You know him? Everybody around here knows him. Earl looked sickened just speaking the name. Man owns half the county through shell companies and intimidation. Former contractor himself before he got rich. Earl paused heavily. Folks say people who cross him tend to disappear. The tunnel trembled faintly behind them as another explosion of noise echoed from the bunker. The search teams were getting closer. Travis looked toward the distant sounds. They know we escaped. They expected you to panic, Earl replied. Caleb figured you wouldn't. That sentence landed harder than expected, because suddenly Travis realized something disturbing. His uncle had prepared this tunnel specifically for him. Not some random heir. Not anybody. Him. Ghost nudged Travis's hand again impatiently. Move. The dog sensed danger closing fast. They pushed deeper through the tunnel while Earl led the way with a dim lantern. Eventually, cold, fresh air drifted through the darkness ahead. Then the tunnel opened. Snow-covered wilderness stretched before them beneath moonlight and blowing pine trees. The hidden exit sat concealed behind fallen rocks along a frozen riverbank, nearly half a mile from the farmhouse. From here, the Mercer property looked distant across the valley, and alive. Flashlights moved around the barn like insects in darkness. Several black SUVs surrounded the property now. Men searched the grounds with military precision. Naomi stared in horror. There must be 15 of them. At least, Travis muttered. Ghost watched silently beside him. No fear, only readiness. Far across the valley, the farmhouse lights suddenly turned on, every window glowing bright against the snow. The intruders had fully taken the property. Then another pair of headlights appeared climbing the main road toward the farm. Different vehicle. Long black truck. Earl looked toward it grimly. That'll be him. The truck stopped near the barn. One man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, dark coat blowing in the wind. Even from this distance, his presence carried authority. The search teams immediately shifted around him, listening, obeying. Victor Shaw. Travis watched silently while the man surveyed the property like he already owned it. Ghost let out a low, dangerous growl. Then Victor slowly turned his head toward the distant tree line, toward them. Too far to see clearly. And yet somehow Travis felt absolutely certain. The man knew they were still out there. Victor spoke briefly to another guard before climbing back into the truck. Minutes later, the vehicles began shutting down searchlights around the barn. Not because they stopped hunting, because they changed tactics. Earl stared toward the property uneasily. He'll make you an offer first. Naomi frowned. An offer? Earl nodded once. Victor Shaw always offers people one chance to sell their soul before he decides to take it another way. Snow drifted quietly through moonlight around them. Ghost remained pressed against Travis's side, watching the valley, watching the farm, watching the war that had just begun. Snow drifted silently across the valley, while the lights around the Mercer property glowed like a military checkpoint beneath the mountains. Black SUVs surrounded the farmhouse. Men moved between buildings carrying flashlights and rifles beneath heavy winter gear. From this distance they looked almost unreal against the white landscape, like shadows searching through a graveyard. Ghost never looked away from them. The German shepherd stood beside Travis at the edge of the frozen ridge, breath steaming into cold air, while low growls rumbled deep inside his chest. The dog remembered war too. Maybe not in words, but in instincts, in sense, in tension, in the sound of danger moving through darkness. Earl finally motioned toward the forest behind them. "We need to move before daylight." The old hunting cabin sat hidden deep among towering pines nearly 2 miles west of the farm. The trail climbed steeply through snow-covered terrain, while freezing wind howled between the trees overhead. Naomi stumbled several times in the deep drifts. Ghost stayed close beside her each time she lost balance, almost guiding her forward. The farther they traveled from the property, the quieter the world became. No engines, no voices, only snow and wilderness. But Travis couldn't shake the feeling they were still being watched. Combat instincts rarely disappeared once they rooted themselves inside a man's bones. The cabin finally appeared just before dawn. Small, weathered, half buried in snow. Smoke stains darkened the stone chimney, though no fire had burned there recently. One window remained boarded shut, while the others were frosted over completely. Earl pushed the door open carefully. Inside smelled of pine wood, old coffee, and cold ashes. Simple but sturdy. A table, wood stove, bunk beds, emergency lanterns, the kind of place built by men who understood survival. "You can stay here a few days," Earl said quietly. "Nobody comes this far into the ridge during winter." Travis dropped the backpack carefully onto the table. Ghost immediately began circling the cabin interior, checking corners and windows, before finally positioning himself beside the front door. Guarding. Always guarding. Naomi sat heavily near the stove and rubbed both hands across her face. "I still can't believe this is real." Travis unzipped the backpack slowly. The bunker files spilled across the rough wooden table beneath lantern light. Photographs, journals, hard drives, evidence of something rotten hidden beneath decades of war. Earl stared at the documents uneasily. Caleb spent years protecting those. "He died for them," Travis replied quietly. Nobody answered, because everyone inside the cabin knew it was probably true. Outside, dawn slowly brightened the mountains in pale gray light. Ghost suddenly lifted his head sharply, listening. Then came the sound. Distant engines. Travis moved to the window immediately. Far below, through the trees, black vehicles crawled slowly along old logging roads surrounding the valley. Search patterns. Systematic. Victor Shaw wasn't guessing anymore. He was hunting. Naomi looked terrified. "How many people does this man have?" "Enough," Earl muttered darkly. Travis kept watching the vehicles below. Professional spacing, communication discipline, search containment. Black Hollow had not sent security guards. They sent operators, men with military training. Ghost moved beside Travis at the window, ears raised toward the forest. Then suddenly, the shepherd barked once, hard. Travis followed the dog's gaze. Movement. Near the trees east of the cabin. Fast. A figure disappearing behind snow-covered pines. The former seal's body reacted instantly. Inside. Now. Naomi froze. What? Move! Earl grabbed a rifle hanging above the fireplace while Travis killed the lantern light. Darkness swallowed the cabin immediately. Ghost stood rigid near the door, growling. Outside, snow crunched faintly. Close now. Very close. The cabin walls creaked beneath winter wind, while everyone inside listened to footsteps circle slowly through the trees. One set. Maybe two. Ghost's growl deepened dangerously. Then, a flashlight beam swept briefly across the cabin window. Naomi covered her mouth to stop herself from gasping. Travis crouched beside the wall holding Caleb's pistol steady. Seconds stretched painfully. Then a voice echoed faintly from outside. Tracks lead here. Another voice answered farther away. Check the ridgeline. Ghost lunged toward the door, barking violently. The footsteps outside stopped instantly, then came running. Snow exploding beneath boots. Travis rushed to the window in time to see two dark figures disappearing through the trees below the cabin. Scouts. They found them. Earl cursed softly. They'll bring more. Travis already knew, and Victor Shaw would not keep offering patience forever. By midday, the storm returned harder than before. Snow buried the mountains beneath blinding white curtains, while wind screamed across the ridge like something wounded. The cabin shook beneath heavy gusts. Inside, Travis finally began reading Caleb's journals properly. Page after page revealed a man slowly consumed by truth. Contractor bribery, weapons shipments, missing soldiers, then deeper entries, names of politicians, federal contacts, military intelligence officers. Caleb had documented everything obsessively, and one line appeared repeatedly throughout the journals. They are inside the system now. Naomi sat quietly near the stove reviewing financial records, while Earl monitored radio traffic through an old emergency scanner. Ghost remained beside Travis almost constantly, like the dog sensed his mind slipping somewhere dangerous. The more Travis read, the more memories returned. Convoys rerouted unexpectedly overseas, missing manifests, operations that never made tactical sense. At the time, he obeyed orders because that's what soldiers did. Now he wondered how many missions had really protected America, and how many protected men like Victor Shaw. A sharp burst of static suddenly crackled from Earl's scanner. Voices. Search Western Ridge. Thermal signatures possible. Shaw wants confirmation. Earl lowered the volume immediately. They're closing in. Naomi looked up sharply. How close? The old rancher moved toward the window carefully. Too close. Ghost stood immediately. The shepherd's entire posture changed again. Alert, ready, protective. Travis moved beside Earl. Through swirling snow he saw them. 3 black figures moving between trees downhill from the cabin. Methodical. Armed. One carried binoculars. Another held what looked like a radio antenna. Search teams. And they were climbing directly toward the cabin. Back entrance, Travis said quietly. Naomi's face drained of color. They found us already? They tracked us. Ghost barked once and rushed toward the rear of the cabin. The former SEAL grabbed the backpack of evidence while Earl loaded additional ammunition into the hunting rifle. Outside, the storm reduced visibility almost completely. Good for hiding, bad for running. The back door burst open beneath violent wind. Snow exploded into the cabin. Ghost leapt into the storm first without hesitation. Travis followed immediately behind Naomi and Earl. The cold hit like knives. Wind howled through the mountains while snow swallowed visibility beyond 20 feet. Perfect conditions for losing people or dying in the wilderness. Behind them, voices shouted near the front side of the cabin. "They're moving!" Ghost sprinted ahead through the trees, stopping every few seconds to make sure Travis followed. The dog wasn't just escaping, he was guiding. The mountain terrain dropped steeply into a narrow forested ravine where snow-covered boulders and frozen creeks created natural cover. Travis heard boots crashing somewhere behind them. Closer. The hunters had split into teams. Ghost suddenly stopped near a fallen pine tree and barked sharply toward Travis. The dog's eyes locked onto a narrow hidden trail descending toward the river gorge below. Then gunfire cracked somewhere uphill. Not close. Warning shots, designed to panic them into mistakes. Naomi stumbled hard in the snow. Travis caught her arm immediately. "Hurry!" Ghost circled back protectively while Earl covered the rear with the rifle. Another shout echoed through the storm. "They're below us!" The chase exploded fully now. Men crashing through forest, radios shouting coordinates, snow flying beneath boots. Ghost suddenly lunged toward a dark figure emerging between trees ahead. The shepherd hit the man hard enough to knock him backward into the snow. The attacker cried out in shock as Ghost snarled over him viciously. Travis pulled the dog away just long enough to keep moving downhill. No time. No room. The storm swallowed everything. Then came the bridge. Old, wooden, narrow, stretching across a deep, frozen river gorge. Travis recognized the danger immediately. Bottleneck. Ambush point. Ghost growled sharply. Too late. A dark figure stepped from behind the bridge supports holding a hunting knife. The man lunged directly toward Travis. Ghost intercepted him instantly. The shepherd launched through the snow with explosive force, but the attacker slashed wildly during the collision. Ghost yelped, a terrible sound. Travis drove the man backward into the railing while Earl's rifle cracked once through the storm. The attacker fled instantly into the trees, but Travis barely noticed because Ghost collapsed into the snow beside the bridge. Blood spread across white powder beneath the shepherd's shoulder, bright red against endless white. And suddenly, all the fear Travis Mercer buried for years came rushing back at once. Ghost! The German shepherd collapsed heavily beside the frozen bridge, breath steaming violently into the blizzard, while blood spread across the snow beneath his shoulder. For one terrible second, Travis couldn't move. The mountains vanished. The storm vanished. All he saw was another battlefield, another friend bleeding in front of him, another life slipping through his hands. Not again, not him. Ghost tried to stand immediately despite the wound, still protecting, still ready to fight. The dog let out a strained growl toward the forest behind them where distant voices still echoed through the storm. Travis dropped to his knees beside him. Easy, easy. His hands shook badly now. Naomi slid through the snow beside them while Earl scanned the tree line with the rifle. "We need to move!" the old rancher shouted over the wind, but Travis barely heard him. Ghost whined softly as Travis pressed both hands against the wound. Warm blood soaked instantly through his gloves. The knife slash had cut deep along the dog's shoulder and ribs. Not immediately fatal, but dangerous. Especially out here. Especially in this cold. Ghost's brown eyes stayed locked on Travis the entire time, trusting him completely. That trust hurt worse than anything, because men had trusted Travis before, and many of them never came home. The former SEAL swallowed hard and forced his mind back into focus. Training, pressure, stabilize, move. "We have to get him inside somewhere," Travis said. Earl pointed through the storm toward distant tree lines downhill. "There's another old ranger cabin near the gorge." Travis immediately lifted Ghost into his arms. The shepherd weighed nearly 80 pounds, but adrenaline erased the strain. Ghost tried weakly to resist being carried, still wanting to walk beside him, still trying to work. "You already did enough," Travis whispered through clenched teeth. Snow hammered against them mercilessly as they crossed the bridge and disappeared deeper into the mountains. The second cabin looked even older than the first. A forgotten ranger outpost, hidden among thick pines near the frozen riverbank. Half the roof sagged beneath heavy snow, but smoke stains around the chimney suggested hunters still occasionally used it during winter. Earl kicked the door open hard. "Inside!" The cabin smelled of cold wood, damp wool, and ash. Travis lowered Ghost carefully beside the stone fireplace while Naomi rushed to clear debris from an old table. The shepherd's breathing sounded wrong now. Too fast. Too shallow. Travis ripped open old military medical kits from Caleb's emergency supplies while Earl worked frantically to start a fire. The storm outside screamed against the cabin walls. Inside, everything narrowed down to blood and breath. "Hold him steady," Travis said. Naomi knelt beside Ghost carefully, hands trembling as she stroked the shepherd's neck. "It's okay, buddy." Ghost winced softly, but never snapped, never panicked. The dog trusted them even in pain. Travis cleaned the wound as quickly as possible. Knife wound, deep but clean. No arterial spray. Thank God. Ghost whined once when the antiseptic hit the injury. Travis felt the sound like a knife inside his own chest. "I know," he whispered. "I know." His voice cracked slightly. He hated himself for that. Men in combat didn't crack. But this wasn't combat anymore. This was worse. Because Ghost wasn't just military equipment, not just a working dog. He was the last living thing in the world Travis fully trusted. Outside, darkness settled across the mountains while snow buried the world deeper in silence. The fire finally caught. Warm orange light filled the cabin slowly, pushing back shadows across rough wooden walls. Ghost lay beside the fireplace wrapped in old wool blankets, while Travis stayed beside him watching every breath. Naomi quietly approached carrying coffee boiled over the wood stove. "You should rest." Travis shook his head immediately. "No." "You've been awake almost 2 days." I said no. The sharpness in his voice surprised even him. Naomi stepped back slightly. Ghost lifted his head weakly toward Travis. The former SEAL immediately softened, rubbing the shepherd gently behind one ear. "Sorry," he muttered quietly. The dog's tail tapped once against the floorboards. Forgiveness. Instant and unconditional. That somehow hurt too. Hours passed. The storm outside deepened into full mountain fury. Wind rattled the windows while branches scraped against the cabin roof like skeletal fingers. Earl monitored radio traffic quietly from another room. Naomi eventually fell asleep near the fireplace wrapped beneath blankets. Only Travis remained awake, watching Ghost, watching the fire, watching old memories crawl back from places he spent years trying to bury. The cabin's silence became dangerous after midnight, because silence gave PTSD room to breathe. Every crack of burning wood sounded like distant rifle fire. Every gust of wind became helicopter rotors. Every shadow became movement. Travis sat with his back against the wall, gripping Caleb's journal tightly, while Ghost rested beside him. Then quietly, almost without realizing it, he started talking. I should have gotten them out sooner. His voice sounded hollow in the firelight. Ghost lifted his head slightly. Kandahar. Travis stared into the flames. We knew the convoy route felt wrong. Ruiz said it too. His jaw tightened painfully. But command signed off on it. The fire crackled softly. Snow hammered against the windows. We lost 4 men in less than 90 seconds. Travis swallowed hard. Miller burned alive inside the second vehicle. His breathing changed slightly now, dangerously close to panic. Ghost slowly dragged himself closer despite the pain and rested his head against Travis's knee, grounding him again, saving him again. Travis lowered his head. And the worst part? His voice nearly broke. Part of me was relieved it wasn't me. The confession hung heavily inside the cabin. Raw, ugly, human. Tears finally came then, quiet at first, then harder. Years of buried guilt cracking open beneath firelight and snowstorms. Naomi woke silently nearby but said nothing, because some grief deserved witnesses without interruption. Ghost remained pressed against Travis the entire time. The shepherd's breathing stayed weak but steady beneath the blankets. Eventually, Travis wiped both hands across his face roughly. I failed everybody. A soft mechanical click interrupted the silence. Travis looked up sharply. An old cassette recorder sat beside Caleb's journals on the nearby shelf. Its small red light blinked faintly. Battery powered. Still running. Naomi stared at it. Was that on before? Nobody answered. Travis reached toward the recorder carefully and pressed play. Static crackled softly. Then Caleb Mercer's voice filled the cabin. Older, tired, calm. If you're hearing this, then Ghost survived long enough to bring you here. Travis froze completely. Even Naomi stopped breathing. Caleb continued. You're probably angry with me. You have every right to be. A pause. But if you reached this cabin, then Black Hollow already knows who you are. The fire popped sharply beside them. Ghost's ears twitched weakly at the sound of Caleb's voice. I followed your military career for years, Travis, Caleb said quietly. Not because I wanted to control your life, but because I needed to know whether there was still one Mercer left who understood the difference between duty and obedience. Travis stared silently into the flames. Caleb's voice softened slightly. You disobeyed direct orders during Kandahar to evacuate civilians trapped inside the southern district. Another pause. That decision cost you promotion, maybe your entire career. Travis felt cold all over suddenly. That mission remained classified. Nobody outside his chain of command should have known those details. You chose conscience over command, Caleb said. That's why I chose you. Silence filled the cabin except for wind and fire. Then Caleb's tone darkened. Black Hollow survives because too many men confuse loyalty with obedience. Good soldiers become dangerous when they finally learn the difference. Travis gripped the recorder tighter unconsciously. Outside, faint lights moved between trees beyond the storm. Naomi saw them first. Travis. Several distant beams drifted slowly through the forest below the ridge. Searchlights. Coming closer. Caleb's voice continued through static. A man without purpose dies long before his body does. Ghost slowly lifted his head toward the windows and growled weakly. The hunt wasn't over. It was getting closer. Searchlights drifted through the forest below the ridge like pale ghosts moving between the trees. Slow, methodical, patient. Ghost's weak growl vibrated softly beside the fireplace, while Travis stared through the frost-covered cabin window. "They found the second trail," Earl muttered grimly from across the room. Naomi stood beside the table, clutching Caleb's recorder tightly. "What do we do now?" Travis didn't answer immediately, because for the first time since arriving in Montana, the situation felt bigger than survival. The bunker files weren't just evidence anymore. They were leverage. Dangerous leverage. The kind powerful men killed to protect. Ghost shifted painfully beneath the blankets and tried to stand again. Travis immediately knelt beside him. "No." The shepherd ignored him and forced himself upright anyway, favoring the wounded shoulder but still positioning himself between Travis and the door. Protecting. Always protecting. The former SEAL rested one hand against Ghost's neck quietly. "You stubborn idiot." Ghost's tail tapped weakly once against the floorboards. Earl suddenly turned up the volume on the emergency scanner. Static crackled loudly through the cabin. Then voices. Negative visual. "Shaw says no gunfire unless necessary." "Retrieve the drives." Naomi frowned. "They don't want us dead?" "Not yet," Travis replied coldly. The radio crackled again. "Federal contact arriving tomorrow morning." That changed the room instantly. Earl looked toward Travis sharply. "Federal?" Naomi's face darkened. Caleb was right. The corruption reached farther than any of them wanted to believe. Travis moved back toward the table and opened Caleb's journals again, beneath firelight. One passage near the back had been underlined repeatedly. "When the system cannot be trusted, truth must survive outside it." Tucked between the pages sat another folded document. Different handwriting. Modern. Naomi took it carefully and unfolded it beneath the lantern. "It's a phone number." Below the number were only 2 handwritten words. Rachel Vega. Earl recognized the name immediately. "The journalist?" Naomi looked up. "You know her?" "She's been investigating contractor corruption for years." Earl lowered the rifle slowly. "Got chased out of Washington after exposing defense kickbacks." Travis studied the paper. "Can she be trusted?" Naomi answered immediately. If Caleb left her number hidden in the journals, yes. The storm outside intensified again, rattling the cabin hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling beams. Ghost suddenly lifted his head toward the woods. Another engine. Closer now. Not part of the search teams. Travis moved quickly to the window. A single pair of headlights crawled slowly along the lower ridge road through the storm. Different vehicle. Older. Civilian. The truck stopped nearly 100 yards from the cabin. Nobody exited immediately. Ghost growled low. Then the driver's door opened. An older man stepped into the snow wearing a long winter coat and carrying no visible weapon. Tall, broad-shouldered, military posture. Earl squinted through the darkness. "Well, I'll be damned. Who is it?" Naomi whispered. Earl stared hard through the glass. Admiral Harlow. The name hit Travis immediately. Retired Admiral Daniel Harlow, decorated Navy commander, congressional consultant, legend among SEAL circles, and according to several rumors, one of the few officers who openly criticized private contractor influence after the wars overseas. "What's he doing here?" Travis asked. Earl gave a dry laugh. "Probably the same thing we are." A knock echoed against the cabin door. Ghost barked instantly despite the pain. Travis approached carefully with Caleb's pistol hidden behind his leg. "Who sent you?" The voice outside answered calmly. "Caleb Mercer." Silence. The storm roared around the cabin. Then the older voice continued. "And if you're Travis Mercer, your uncle spent 20 years preparing for this exact conversation." Travis slowly opened the door. Admiral Harlow entered carrying snow across the floorboards with him. His face looked deeply weathered by age and regret, but his eyes remained sharp beneath thick gray brows. The first thing he noticed was Ghost. The old admiral crouched slowly despite aching knees. "Good dog," he murmured quietly. Ghost sniffed him once, then stopped growling. Trust. Instant. That alone told Travis more than introductions could. Harlow removed wet gloves carefully before looking toward the journals spread across the table. "So," he said softly, "you found Caleb's war." Nobody spoke for a moment. The fire crackled heavily beside them. Finally, Naomi stepped forward. "You knew everything?" The admiral shook his head slowly. "Not everything." Caleb compartmentalized information aggressively near the end. His expression darkened. Probably because too many people inside government were compromised already. Travis studied the man carefully. "Why help now?" Harlow met his eyes directly. "Because Caleb saved my life in Kuwait in 1991. A pause. "And because I failed him afterward." The cabin fell silent again. Ghost slowly lowered himself beside the fireplace once more while Harlow approached the table. His eyes lingered on the hard drives. "They'll kill for those." "We noticed," Earl muttered. Harlow ignored the comment. "Victor Shaw isn't just a contractor anymore," the admiral continued quietly. Black Hollow Energy became a laundering mechanism for off-book military operations after 9/11. His jaw tightened. Weapons, intelligence assets, private militias, political financing. Naomi looked horrified. "And nobody stopped them?" Harlow laughed bitterly. "Some tried." He glanced toward Caleb's journals. Most ended up dead, discredited, or disappeared. The storm battered the cabin harder outside. Travis folded his arms. "So why are we still alive?" Harlow answered immediately. "Because they don't know how much Caleb left behind." His eyes shifted toward the backpack. "Yet." Ghost suddenly growled again toward the window. Everyone turned. Flashlights. Closer now. Search teams moving uphill through the storm. Harlow cursed softly. "They're tightening the perimeter." Naomi looked toward him urgently. "What do we do?" The old admiral reached inside his coat slowly and removed a satellite phone. Military grade. Secure. "I contacted someone before coming here." "Who?" "A journalist Caleb trusted." Harlow handed the phone toward Travis. "Rachel Vega." The line connected after several seconds of static. Then a woman's voice answered sharply. "Talk." Harlow nodded toward Travis. "She needs to hear you." Travis hesitated before taking the phone. "This is Travis Mercer." Silence on the line. Then, "So Caleb finally found his successor." The words unsettled him immediately. "I'm not anybody's successor." Rachel ignored that. "Do you have the evidence?" "Yes." "Good." Papers shuffled faintly on her end. "Because Victor Shaw already has federal warrants preparing against you." Naomi stared in disbelief. "What?" Rachel continued coldly through the phone. "They're building a narrative that you stole classified defense material and assaulted private security personnel. A pause. By tomorrow afternoon, they'll paint you as an unstable homeless veteran suffering PTSD. Travis felt anger rise slowly again. Calculated. Controlled. The perfect target. Homeless. Traumatized. Former military. Easy to discredit. Rachel's voice lowered. Listen carefully. Somebody inside federal agencies leaked your location tonight. Static crackled heavily. You cannot trust local law enforcement or federal task forces connected to defense contracting. Harlow nodded grimly. We figured as much. Rachel continued. There's only one way this survives. Her tone sharpened. Public release. Full release. Simultaneous distribution. Travis looked toward Caleb's journals. All of it? All of it. Outside. A shout echoed faintly through the storm below. The search teams were almost at the cabin now. Ghost struggled painfully back to his feet. Protecting again. Always. Rachel's voice returned through static. You need to survive until sunrise. A pause. After that, we move the evidence. Then the line went dead. The cabin fell silent except for wind and fire. Harlow looked toward Travis carefully. Your uncle knew this day would come. Travis stared at Ghost standing guard despite the blood staining his fur. Then toward the lights climbing through the snow outside. The war Caleb Mercer buried beneath that farm had finally surfaced, and now there was no hiding from it anymore. The storm finally broke just before dawn. Clouds tore apart above the mountains while pale gray light spilled across endless snow-covered forests. The world looked cold enough to crack stone, and below the ridge, the hunters were still coming. Search teams moved carefully through the trees beneath the cabin, flashlights now replaced by rifles and thermal scanners. Black Hollow's men had spread across the valley in disciplined formation, tightening around the mountain like a noose. Inside the ranger cabin, nobody spoke for several long moments. The fire had burned low. Ghost rested beside it, breathing heavily, though the bleeding had slowed beneath Travis's bandages. Even injured, the shepherd refused to fully sleep. Every few minutes his ears twitched toward the woods outside. Still guarding. Still working. Admiral Harlow studied a topographic map spread across the table. They'll expect us to stay hidden until extraction, he said quietly. Travis shook his head immediately. No. Naomi looked up sharply. What do you mean, no? The former SEAL stared toward the distant valley beyond the frosted windows. They control the roads. They control local law enforcement. By noon, they'll probably control the official story, too. His jaw tightened. If we stay defensive, they win. Earl folded his arms. So what are you thinking? Travis looked toward the Mercer farm in the distance. Smoke drifted faintly from the barn now. Black Hollow had occupied the property completely overnight. They want the evidence buried, Travis said quietly. Which means the farm still matters. Harlow understood first. The bunker. Travis nodded once. There's more down there. Naomi stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You want to go back? I want to finish what Caleb started. Outside, wind moved through the pine trees in low, haunting waves. Ghost slowly pushed himself upright beside the fireplace. The shepherd limped painfully toward Travis despite the injury. Ready. Always ready. The sight nearly broke something inside him. You should be resting, Travis muttered softly. Ghost pressed against his leg anyway. Harlow watched the dog carefully. He knows what's coming. Yes, he did. By mid-morning, they moved. The group descended through frozen forest trails, while sunlight struggled weakly through thinning storm clouds overhead. Snow reached nearly to their knees in places, slowing progress toward the valley below. Ghost limped beside Travis the entire way, never falling behind. Twice Travis tried ordering him back toward safer terrain. Twice the shepherd ignored him completely. The Mercer farm finally emerged through the trees near noon, and the sight made Naomi stop cold. Black Hollow had transformed the property overnight. Temporary floodlights, portable generators, armed patrols. The farmhouse windows were boarded now, while 2 black trucks sat near the barn entrance. Men carrying tactical rifles moved through the snow with military precision. Victor Shaw had established a command center. Travis studied the perimeter silently through binoculars. 8 outside, maybe more inside. Harlow lowered his own binoculars slowly. They're preparing to destroy the bunker. Sure enough, several men unloaded fuel cans near the barn. Burn plans. If they couldn't recover the evidence, they'd erase everything. Ghost suddenly growled low toward the northern tree line. Travis followed the dog's gaze. Movement. Additional vehicles approaching from the highway. Federal SUVs. Naomi's face paled. They're already here. Harlow cursed softly. Too fast. The corruption network was moving exactly like Caleb predicted. Fast. Coordinated. Institutional. By sunset, the entire valley would probably become a sealed federal crime scene, and every piece of evidence inside that bunker would vanish forever. Travis lowered the binoculars slowly. We don't have time anymore. Naomi grabbed his arm. Travis, listen to yourself. There are armed men all over that property. They're not soldiers. That doesn't make them less dangerous. No, Travis said coldly. It makes them predictable. The old SEAL instincts had fully awakened now. Not rage, not recklessness. Something sharper. Purpose. For years after leaving the military, Travis drifted through life numb and directionless, surviving day to day without believing he still mattered to anything. But standing above that valley, watching men prepare to bury the truth beneath fire and bureaucracy, something inside him finally aligned again. Mission. Ghost barked once beside him. Agreement. Harlow slowly removed a weathered notebook from his coat pocket. Caleb left tactical notes about the farm. He handed it over carefully. Emergency defense positions, escape corridors, generator shutoffs. Travis flipped through the pages quickly. Military sketches, kill zones, blind spots. Caleb Mercer had turned the farm into a fortress years ago. Not for paranoia. Preparation. He knew this day would come, Travis whispered. Earl checked his rifle. Then let's make sure his preparation wasn't wasted. The plan formed quickly. Simple. Dangerous. Necessary. Harlow and Naomi would move toward the old communications shed near the western fence line, where satellite equipment from Caleb's bunker connected to external transmission systems. If they could upload the files publicly, Black Hollow lost control. Meanwhile, Travis and Earl would create enough chaos around the barn to split the security teams away from the communications route. Ghost refused to remain behind, no matter how many times Travis tried. The shepherd stood rigid beside him, staring toward the farm. Waiting. Finally, Travis crouched beside the dog and pressed his forehead gently against Ghost's. You don't owe me this. Ghost licked once at his cheek, then turned toward the valley. Ready. The sun disappeared behind mountains as they moved. Darkness spread quickly across the snow-covered farm, while generators hummed beside the barn. Armed guards patrolled carefully through the frozen fields, unaware death and truth were already moving toward them through the trees. Travis and Ghost reached the southern fence first. The former SEAL studied guard patterns carefully. Old instincts returned with terrifying ease. Movement timing, sight lines, terrain cover. Ghost remained low beside him despite the pain. Professional. Disciplined. Earl positioned himself farther east with the rifle overlooking the access road. Then the first distraction exploded. A propane tank near the outer sheds erupted into fire after Earl's shot pierced the valve. Flames roared violently into the night sky. Guards shouted instantly. Searchlights swung wildly toward the explosion. Victor Shaw emerged from the farmhouse furious, barking orders at his men. Travis moved immediately, Ghost beside him. They crossed the southern yard fast beneath darkness and confusion. The barn doors stood partially open now, fuel cans stacked nearby. Inside, men worked frantically hauling crates from the bunker entrance, destroying evidence. Ghost suddenly stopped, growled. One armed guard stepped directly from the shadows near the barn corner. Too close. The man raised his weapon. Ghost hit him first. The wounded shepherd launched through the snow with savage force despite the injury, slamming the attacker sideways into stacked fuel cans. The rifle discharged harmlessly into darkness. Travis tackled the man hard before alarms fully erupted across the property. Then shouting exploded everywhere. "They're here!" Floodlights ignited across the valley. Gunfire cracked into the night sky. Chaos. Exactly what Travis needed. Inside the barn, workers scrambled in panic, while smoke from the earlier explosion drifted across the property. Ghost limped beside Travis through the massive doors toward the bunker hatch. Then Travis saw Victor Shaw, standing near the underground entrance, calm, waiting. The contractor's face remained emotionless beneath harsh floodlights. "You should have taken the money," Shaw said coldly. Travis kept moving forward slowly. Behind him, Ghost bared his teeth despite blood staining his fur. Victor glanced toward the dog briefly. "Loyal animals die for broken men every day." Wrong thing to say. Ghost lunged first. At that exact second, Naomi's voice exploded through radios and speakers across the property. "We're live!" Every monitor connected to Black Hollow's communications system suddenly lit up. Satellite uploads, video files, military footage, Ruiz, convoys, executions. Caleb Mercer's evidence flooded outward into the world all at once. Victor Shaw's expression changed for the first time. Fear. Real fear. Then chaos truly began. Federal sirens echoed faintly from distant roads. News alerts spread instantly through every connected system. Black Hollow's secret war was no longer buried, and beneath blazing floodlights and falling snow, Ghost stood bleeding beside Travis Mercer, while the truth finally escaped into the world. Sirens echoed across the valley. Not just local police anymore. State vehicles. Federal units. News crews racing north through mountain roads after the evidence dump detonated across every major network in America. Inside the barn, panic spread through Black Hollow's men like fire. Some ran for vehicles. Some destroyed radios. Some simply froze beneath the realization that decades of secrets had just become public. Victor Shaw stood perfectly still near the bunker entrance. Snow drifted through the open barn doors around him, while monitors continued flashing leaked files, convoy footage, contractor records, and Caleb Mercer's testimony across every connected screen. Ruiz's face appeared again, alive in the footage, executed in silence. The lies were over. Ghost growled weakly beside Travis despite blood soaking through his fur. Victor glanced at the dog one final time, then toward Travis. "You think this changes anything?" Shaw asked quietly. His voice no longer carried arrogance, only bitterness. "The machine survives." Travis stared back coldly. "Maybe." Outside, headlights flooded the valley. More sirens. Closer now. Victor slowly smiled. Tired. Defeated. "You know what your uncle never understood?" he asked. "People don't actually want truth. They want comfort." Travis took one step closer. "My uncle understood exactly what fear costs." For several long seconds, neither man moved. Then Victor Shaw slowly raised both hands as armed federal agents stormed through the barn entrances shouting commands. Searchlights swept across snow and steel. Weapons lowered. Black Hollow's empire finally cracked beneath public exposure and internal betrayal all at once. Ghost collapsed heavily beside Travis the moment the adrenaline faded. The shepherd's injured legs finally gave out beneath him. "Ghost!" Travis dropped instantly beside the dog. The world blurred around him again. Agents, sirens, voices. None of it mattered. Only the dog. Ghost's breathing sounded shallow but steady, while snow melted slowly across his fur beneath the barn lights. A medic rushed forward. "He's alive." Travis barely heard the words, because suddenly his vision burned. Not from pain, relief, the kind that hurts almost as much. 2 years later. Summer wind rolled gently across the Montana Valley, where snow and gunfire once ruled the night. The Mercer farm no longer looked haunted. Fields of tall sunflowers stretched beneath blue mountain skies, while restored fences lined green pastures surrounding the property. The old farmhouse stood rebuilt and warm beneath fresh white paint and cedar roofing. And the barn. The barn had become something entirely new. Children of veterans played near the rebuilt porch, while retired military dogs rested beneath shaded trees nearby. Trucks carrying supplies moved slowly through the valley roads toward newly constructed training fields and therapy gardens spread across the land. A weathered wooden sign stood proudly beside the entrance road. Mercer Ridge Veterans Sanctuary below it. No warrior left behind. The place had grown far beyond anything Travis imagined that first freezing night inside the Colorado shelter. The bunker still existed beneath the barn, but now its rooms stored archives, historical records, and evidence protected legally by federal oversight and independent journalists who refused to let Caleb Mercer's work disappear again. The public scandal surrounding Black Hollow Energy had exploded nationwide after the leak. Congressional investigations followed. Arrests followed. Resignations followed. Not every corrupt official faced justice. Caleb had been right about that. But enough truth reached daylight to change things. Enough families finally learned what truly happened to soldiers who never came home. Enough names were restored. And somehow, through all the chaos, Travis Mercer survived long enough to build something better from the wreckage. The old SEAL stepped out onto the farmhouse porch carrying 2 cups of coffee as morning sunlight rolled across the valley. He looked different now, still scarred, still carrying ghosts, but no longer hollow. The deep exhaustion behind his eyes had softened into something steadier. Purpose. Near the porch steps, Ghost slept beneath warm sunlight. Older now, gray spreading heavily through his muzzle. The knife wound left a permanent stiffness in one shoulder, causing the shepherd to limp slightly whenever he crossed the property. But every morning, without fail, Ghost still made a full patrol around the farm before sunrise. Guardian of the land, guardian of the people healing there. Travis sat quietly beside the dog on the porch. Ghost opened one eye briefly before resting his head across Travis's boot, the same way he used to beside shelter cots and battlefield ruins. Some habits never changed. Children laughed somewhere near the greenhouse beyond the fields. Veterans repaired fencing near the horse pasture, while therapy dogs trained beside the western barns. Naomi Whitaker walked across the yard carrying folders toward the new administrative building, arguing playfully with Rachel Vega over expansion budgets. Even Earl Donnelly had become part of the place. The old rancher now taught horsemanship classes twice a week for struggling veterans adjusting to civilian life again. The farm had become a refuge, not just for men broken by war, but for the parts of themselves they thought they lost forever. Travis looked toward the rebuilt barn. Inside, one entire wall had been preserved exactly as Caleb left it. Photographs, maps, journals, a memorial. Not to violence, but to truth. Admiral Harlow once called it a museum for unfinished courage. Maybe that was accurate. Ghost stirred beside him as footsteps approached across the porch. A small boy carrying a toy airplane climbed carefully onto the wooden steps. 8-year-old Liam, son of a Marine veteran staying temporarily at the sanctuary. Mr. Mercer? Travis smiled faintly. Yeah, buddy? The boy pointed toward Ghost. Can he come watch the horses with me? Ghost lifted his head immediately at the word horses. Still working. Always working. Travis rubbed the shepherd gently behind one ear. What do you think? Ghost slowly stood despite the limp and walked toward the child without hesitation. Liam grinned instantly. Together, the old war dog and the little boy crossed the yard beneath sunlight and mountain wind. Travis watched them quietly from the porch. Then his eyes drifted toward the sunflower fields stretching across the valley. Thousands of them. Bright gold beneath the sky. Caleb's final crop. Sometimes Travis still woke before dawn, hearing echoes of helicopters and gunfire trapped somewhere deep inside memory. PTSD didn't disappear because life improved. Trauma stayed. But now it no longer owned him completely. Because Caleb Mercer had given him something stronger than fear. Mission. Family. A reason to keep moving forward. Naomi stepped onto the porch carrying fresh mail and smiled softly. You know, she said, most people would have sold this place for the money. Travis watched Ghost disappear into the fields beside the child. Yeah. Naomi leaned against the railing beside him. Any regrets? Wind moved gently through the sunflowers below. For a long moment, Travis said nothing. Then finally, my whole life I thought surviving was enough. He looked out across the sanctuary. The veterans, the dogs, the people rebuilding themselves piece by piece. But survival isn't the same thing as living. Naomi smiled quietly. Below them, Ghost barked once across the valley. Strong, steady home. Travis closed his eyes briefly beneath warm sunlight. For years he carried guilt like chains around his soul. For years he believed war had taken everything good from him. But standing there on Caleb Mercer's land, he finally understood the truth his uncle tried to leave behind. Some warriors survive combat only to discover their real mission begins afterward. And sometimes, The thing that saves a broken soldier isn't revenge, or justice, or even victory. Sometimes it's simply finding a place where the pain no longer has the final word. The mountains stood silent around Mercer Ridge while sunlight rolled endlessly across fields of gold, and beneath that endless Montana sky, the land remembered everything. But for the first time in a very long time, so did hope. If you believe a man has the right to defend his land, protect his people, and stand for the truth no matter the cost, type yes down in the comments. And if you've ever had a loyal dog carry you through your darkest days, leave a paw so we can honor them together. Subscribe and stay with us for more stories about justice, resilience, and ordinary Americans fighting to hold on to what matters most.